Bom dia a todos. Eu sou Rodrigo Pinto, sou organizador aqui do Scrum Day e também sou Professional Scrum Trainer pela Scrum.org. É um prazer ter vocês aqui.
Bom dia, galera. Meu nome é Aline Giunge e sou organizadora, faço parte do comitê de organização do Scrum Day.
Show. Vamos lá, galera. Vamos começar esse dia. Dia muito intenso, né? Muita coisa ainda para acontecer. Então, vamos fazer uma pequena introdução aqui, né? Para acalorar, para começar a pôr vocês, todos nós aqui, no clima do que vai ser esse dia. Então, para começar, vamos falar o que são esses Scrum Days, né? Cara, de onde veio isso, né? O que são os Scrum Days? Os Scrum Days, então, eles são eventos que são organizados pela comunidade da Scrum.org no mundo todo, tá? Então, tem diversos aqui, estão alguns exemplos, né, de Scrum Days que acontecem aí. Nos Estados Unidos tem mais de um até, né? A gente só representou ali o Nova York, mas tem em diversas outras cidades. E a comunidade da Scrum.org é quem organiza esses eventos, tá? Então, a Scrum.org é uma organização que foi fundada pelo Ken Schwaber, né, que é o criador do Scrum, né, um dos criadores do Scrum. E há alguns anos já a gente já tem trabalhado com essa dinâmica de melhorar e aperfeiçoar, né, e trazer profissionalismo, né, em tudo aquilo que diz respeito à profissão do desenvolvimento de software. Nos últimos anos agora, né, nos últimos meses, a gente tem feito uma conversa muito intensa dentro da nossa comunidade, sabendo que tanto o Scrum quanto a Agilidade, eles têm um benefício, né, eles têm um papel muito importante que ele não pode ficar somente, né, fixo ali, não pode ficar muito, né, muito limitado ali a somente a nossa indústria de software. Então, a gente vê que o Scrum e o Agilidade, né, esse é um evento de agilidade, ele deve permear todas as áreas da empresa, né, outras áreas outras empresas que não estão somente ligadas a software, o próprio propósito da Scrum.org ele tem se direcionado a isso agora, tá? A um mercado, né, ou a um benefício que não fique somente conectado com o software, ele possa tocar o marketing, possa conectar com o RH, possa conectar com empresas de diversos fins. Legal?
Bom, a gente já teve 2 edições aqui no Brasil. A primeira foi em 2017, foi um evento para 250 pessoas, e a gente abordou assuntos de agilidade em geral. A nossa segunda edição foi em 2018, a gente fez o evento para 500 pessoas, e a gente focou mais em criação e desenvolvimento de produtos. E em 2019, agora, vocês vão fazer parte da criação dessa história. A gente fez um evento para 700 pessoas com o tema principal Business Agility. Essa daqui é a nossa hashtag oficial, ScrumDayBR. Por favor, fiquem à vontade para utilizar nas redes sociais.
Usem e abusem mesmo.
Isso mesmo.
Podem propagar essa mensagem.
Isso aí. Bom, eu vou explicar um pouquinho da estrutura aqui, tá, do local para vocês entenderem melhor. Ali foi por onde vocês entraram, tá? Então, tem os elevadores, a escada rolante, vocês entraram por aqui, fizeram o credenciamento. E a gente está aqui nesse momento, beleza? A gente tem banheiro feminino ali em cima, e aqui embaixo, banheiro feminino e masculino. Tá? Para cá. Temos a chapelaria ali perto do banheiro, dos banheiros femininos e masculinos.
Então, quem tiver com bolsa ainda aí, quiser colocar lá, só recebe um sticker aí no crachá e está tudo certo.
Isso mesmo. As salas de workshops, elas vão ficar lá do outro lado, tá? A gente tem um número limite, tá, nas salas, então tem workshops que vão ser de 20 pessoas e tem outras que vão ser de 30 pessoas. Isso é um pedido do próprio palestrante, tá bom? Devido às dinâmicas de workshop que vai rolar lá dentro. Então, vai ser por ordem de chegada e depois do coffee a gente vai começar a distribuir lá as pulseirinhas, beleza? Nós temos 2 lounges, tá? Os 2 têm torre com energia. E temos as saídas de emergência também.
Nas 2 laterais e lá ao fundo.
Isso.
Beleza?
A saída de emergência aqui também, naquela porta.
Mas
não vamos precisar.
Não vamos precisar, graças a Deus. Beleza, pessoal. Vamos falar agora, então, rapidamente, né, dos patrocinadores. Eu falei ontem, né, a gente teve uma reunião aqui com a organização. E são players que são fundamentais para que o evento aconteça, tá? Então, a gente tem 2 patrocinadores Platinum esse ano, tá? A Agile School e a Concrete. Eu vou dar 1 minuto aqui para eles falarem um pouquinho do que são, né, e contar também a dinâmica que eles estão com stands ali aqui, saindo da nossa direita. Então, visitem lá o stand, né, eles vão ter coisas bacanas ali para apresentar para vocês. Então, André, por favor.
Bom dia, galera. Meu nome é André Coelho, mais conhecido como Dedé. Eu sou Head de Agilidade lá na Concrete. E, para quem não conhece, Concrete é uma consultoria de produtos digitais. Está fazendo, se não me engano, 15 ou 16 anos agora. E temos nossa sede no Rio e temos também aqui em São Paulo, Recife e BH. Então, a Concrete ela vem com esse desafio de tentar dar ao mercado brasileiro uma oportunidade de brigar com os produtos lá de fora. E a gente faz isso dando consultoria, focando muito em agilidade. E se vocês quiserem conhecer mais um pouco, saber como é o nosso trabalho, lá fora tem um stand. A gente está com a Mari da RH aqui, está com o Wilson e o Valdir também, que são os Scrum Masters lá na Concrete. Então, é pessoal que está lá no dia a dia, vocês podem conversar com eles e entender um pouco como funciona. E no final do dia também vou ter uma palestra aqui, que eu vou falar, acho que nesse palco aqui, né? Esse é o 3? Então nesse palco aqui. Então, se vocês quiserem conhecer um pouco mais, pode me procurar, pode procurar o pessoal no stand. Tem um monte de gente da Concrete por aqui também. O pessoal aqui também já foi da Concrete. Obrigado, gente.
E o Antônio Costa vai falar um pouquinho da JSchool e do stand.
Sejam todos bem-vindos, prazer tê-los aqui. Quem conhece a JSchool sabe que o objetivo da JSchool é ajudar as empresas a serem realmente ágeis. A gente está com uma campanha ali de Scrum Zombie, ou o Zumbi Scrum, né? O que é a ideia do zumbi? O zumbi é uma pessoa. Ela tem braço, tem perna, tem cabeça, mas a gente sabe que não tem realmente algo pulsante. E muitas vezes a gente tem dentro da nossa empresa um Scrum, ou um Kanban, ou seja qual a tecnologia que for, qual ferramenta, mas ela realmente é um zumbi. Por quê? Porque a gente tem uma daily, mas a gente não tem um produto no final de um sprint, a gente não tem um backlog de valor, a gente não tem uma persona, a gente não tem uma automação de teste. Então, o nosso objetivo é justamente ajudar as organizações a serem mais ágeis, tirar as amarras. Acreditamos que todas as empresas podem ser mais ágeis. Passem lá para conhecer os nossos serviços e como a gente pode ajudar a sua empresa a matar o Scrum Zumbi. Bom evento para vocês.
Obrigado, André. Obrigado, Antônio. Treinamentos, galera. Então é o seguinte, como é um evento da comunidade da Scrum.org, a gente tem, então, nesse mês, vamos colocar assim, né, já começou na semana passada, alguns treinamentos da Scrum.org que nós estamos fazendo, né, estamos apresentando aqui, até com descontos super especiais, assim, para justamente engajar a comunidade, para que a comunidade conheça e se engaje com esses treinamentos, tá? Então, ontem a gente teve já, né, ontem e anteontem, né, o PSK, que é o Scrum com Kanban ali, já está done. O PSPO já está esgotado, então mesmo que você queira agora, infelizmente, né, fica para o mês que vem. PSF, que é o Scrum Foundations, né, é um treinamento direcionado a qualquer pessoa que queira trabalhar com Scrum, você vai ver o Scrum na prática ali acontecendo. Treinamentos direcionados a Scrum Master, tá? Scrum Master, o PSM, e o Scrum Master, né, o PSM2, que é um Scrum Master um pouco mais avançado ali. Então, se você quiser saber mais desses treinamentos, né, no próprio stand da JSchool ali, a gente tem maquininha ali, se você quiser adquirir esses treinamentos agora com desconto, né, um desconto especial para o evento, você pode ver lá, tá bom? Pode se direcionar ao stand da JSchool ali para ter mais informações. Também os treinamentos de Management 3.0 e de Design Thinking com Lego, tá? Com Lego Serious Play. Então, são outros treinamentos também que a gente está agregando aí a essa grade. Beleza? Programação, então.
Pessoal, vocês receberam no kit, junto com o kit de vocês, a programação, certo? Na programação, embaixo de cada slot de palestra, vocês têm um slide e uma hashtag do lado. Tá? Essa hashtag vai fazer parte da avaliação das palestras. Então, sempre no final de toda a palestra, a gente vai subir aqui em cima e vai lembrar de vocês para avaliar o palestrante, a palestra que você assistiu. Vocês vão conseguir acessando na slide.com.
Slide.do.
Desculpa, slide.do. Vocês vão inserir o código, né, que está embaixo do nome e do tema do palestrante. vocês vão colocar uma nota ali. São 10 estrelinhas, tá? Ou seja, de 1 a 10. E pronto.
Se você quiser fazer algum comentário também, né? O espaço de perguntas, vocês vão ver que eles vão acontecer ao vivo aqui com a gente aqui, tá? Então a gente vai ter perguntas e respostas acontecendo, mas se a gente quiser utilizar o espaço de perguntas do Slido para comentários, eles serão muito bem-vindos. Feedbacks, comentários são interessantes. Legal? Então, utilizem o espaço ali de pools ali para fazer a nota e o espaço de question somente para comentários livres, se vocês desejarem. Legal? E é muito, muito importante que vocês participem, tá? Então, vocês vão ver que ao final de cada palestra a gente vai relembrar vocês, mostrar as hashtags lá, né? Então, deem essas notas para a gente, né? Deem esse feedback, né? Nos presentem com esse feedback, que vocês vão ver que a gente vai utilizar depois esses feedbacks para o bem de vocês mesmos. Legal?
Isso aí.
Ah!
Seguinte, galera. No final do evento, a gente vai ter um happy hour, tá? A gente trouxe aqui a empresa Floss Chopp. E para a gente conseguir o nosso copinho de chopp, a gente vai ter que baixar o aplicativo deles, a gente vai ter que fazer uma liberação via QR Code. Tá? Então, aqui, se vocês quiserem até já começar a baixar o aplicativo, fiquem à vontade.
Vocês conseguem procurar nas stores por Floss Chopp mesmo, ou fotografem aí o QR Code.
Isso. Assim que vocês baixarem, ele vai falar que vocês não têm crédito, tá? Mas não se assustem, vai ser gratuito o chopp. Tá? Fiquem à vontade.
E comidinhas também, refrigerante,
Exatamente.
água para quem não bebe também. Grátis, galera. Então, se engajem nisso, né? Tenham um momento de networking, façam o máximo, né? Colham o máximo desse evento, né? Bastante importante, bastante interessante. Logo após o evento, então, 6h30, começa o nosso happy hour, beleza?
Isso aí.
Boca livre, não tem por que não vir, né? Só vem.
Vamos lá, feedbacks e oportunidades. Ali onde vocês colocaram o nome de vocês e preencher o cupom do sorteio, a gente vai colocar ali, a gente vai criar nossas paredes, tá? Tanto de feedback quanto de oportunidade. Beleza? Então, eu gostaria que vocês ficassem à vontade. A gente está aberto para receber qualquer tipo de feedback de vocês, tá bom? Gostaria que vocês tivessem a coragem de trazer algo que está incomodando, alguma nova ideia, alguma melhoria, algo que vocês queiram que vocês queiram que a gente faça uma melhoria nesse momento, tá bom? Porque aqui o nosso foco é trazer um evento bom para todos vocês. E a gente aqui, tanto da organização quanto os voluntários, a gente vai se comprometer a tentar sanar esses incômodos de vocês, tá? O quanto antes. Mas a gente também aceita ideias e elogios, fiquem à vontade, tá bom?
Inclusive, se vocês já puderam perceber, né? Tanto nós como azul marinho aqui, quanto os de amarelinho ali, tá? Somos parte da organização, então qualquer tipo de necessidade, anseio ou feedback pode nos procurar também.
Parece
Legal?
preto, mas é azul marinho. Sistema de áudio. Galera, vai funcionar assim. O Keynote, ele vai falar aqui no microfone aberto, tá? Para todo mundo. Quando a gente começar as palestras simultâneas, a gente vai ter aqui o nosso palco 1, tá? Que é a trilha Coragem. Aqui vai ser o palco 2, que é a trilha Respeito. E lá vai ser o palco 3, que é a trilha Abertura. Então, vai funcionar assim. No radinho de vocês, vocês vão ligar ele com o botão aqui no meio. E vocês vão enxergar aqui o canal. Então, vocês vão ficar transitando pelo canal. Trilha 1, trilha 2 e trilha 3. Beleza? Agora, no Keynote, a gente vai ter tradução simultânea também. A tradução simultânea vai ser no canal 9. Tá? Tanto do Keynote, quanto a próxima palestra.
A primeira palestra da trilha Respeito, que é o Alexander Hardt, ele é um PST, ele veio da Alemanha. Tá? Ele fala português, interessante, se você quiser bater um papo com ele. Só que, para a palestra, ele se sente mais à vontade em fazer em inglês. Tá? Então, essa palestra, depois do Keynote, depois do Coffee, tá? Do centro aqui também vai ter tradução. Beleza? Todos os demais palestrantes do dia serão em português, então...
Isso mesmo.
E, começando o nosso dia, então, nós temos um imenso prazer, cara, imenso prazer. A gente sentiu até, a gente ficou um pouco assustado quando a gente fez o convite a Scrum.org, falando assim, pô, a gente vai ter mais uma versão do Scrum Day Brasil, né? Quem que vocês podem disponibilizar para serem? Porque a Scrum.org tem uma vasta quantidade ali de profissionais, tá? Nós somos mais de 270 trainers espalhados pelo mundo todo, né? Dos quais 8 estão aqui no Brasil, mas a gente fez uma uma requisição para a matriz ali, né? Eles entram com financiamento também desse evento aqui, e eles enviam para a gente um keynote, né? E daí esse ano a gente teve o privilégio de ter o Dave conosco. Ele já está há uma semana aqui com a gente, né? Eu tenho visitado algumas empresas assim com ele, e a generosidade e a humildade dessa pessoa é incrível, cara, impressionante. Não é rasgar seda, não. Vocês vão ver a capacidade que ele vai ter. Acho que ele vai demonstrar um pouco uma pílula disso aqui nessa manhã. Mas é impressionante a conversa as conversas que a gente teve essa semana, né, com C-levels de várias empresas aqui, ele dando uma consultoria que, com certeza, vai de centenas a talvez milhares de reais por hora, e ele dando isso de graça, simplesmente se oferecendo para contribuir com a comunidade brasileira, com as empresas brasileiras, de forma muito generosa, cara. É um cara impressionante mesmo. Eu fiquei assustado de ver esse tipo de comportamento. Então, eu gostaria de... Please, Dave, come in. Eu gostaria de pedir a vocês que recebam o Dave como uma calorosa salva de palmas.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Good morning. Isn't it awesome, Brazil? This is my first time here, and I must admit that I am struck by just the sheer energy and passion that this country has. I thought it was just about football that you had all that passion, but apparently other things as well. Who knew? It's amazing to be here. Thank you for inviting me. The last 4 days, I've had the opportunity to visit many clients, many customers, talk with many C-level executives, talk with many Scrum teams, and I'm really excited about what's happening here in Brazil. I think there's something pretty amazing happened, and maybe during the presentation we'll talk a little bit about what makes you special or different, and maybe some of the rest of the world can learn from that as well. It's an incredible place. So thank you. So what am I going to talk about? So I'm Dave. I run Scrum.org. I think some people know that. I'm the tall, bald Englishman. Yes, I'm an Englishman that lives in America. That causes all sorts of trouble. In fact, I'd like to think of this as the original American accent. The Americans don't seem to think that is true, but apparently, 1776. Actually, I meet Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, in a little restaurant in Lexington, Massachusetts. And right opposite the restaurant is this statue basically saying, "We hate the English." It's great. He reminds me frequently whenever we're having a disagreement. He goes, "Look, we can get rid of you." I was like, great, thanks, Ken. But so I run Scrum.org for Ken, and I get the privilege of going around the world talking to thousands of people. It feels like thousands of people. I have no idea how many people about Scrum and about Agile. But actually, I'm not going to be talking much about Scrum today. I'm going to be talking more about the fundamental change that we're seeing around the world. And really, it's because of these things. It's because the world is changing at a phenomenal rate. I see that every day. When Amazon decided it was going to get into the pharmaceutical business, providing pills and potions, which is a big business in America, we're kind of a little bit paranoid and odd. And when they decided they were going to get into this business, the stock price of CVS and Walgreens dropped in half. Just instantly, because Amazon decided it was going to start selling, Tylenol and other things. GE, one of the greatest companies in the world, they build jet engines, they build rocket ships, they build some of the most exciting things, right? Their share price is under $10 now, primarily because of their inability to effectively transition to this new way of working. We'll talk more about that later. Sears, which is an institution in America that sells lots of things. It was whenever you bought a barbecue, you go to Sears. Whenever you were doing some handyman work, you go to Sears. Now it's very hard to find any of them. They've all closed, including the one next to our office in Boston. But so these are traditional bricks and mortar companies. So you can say, they're being disintermediated, they're being destroyed, they're being beaten by the new technology companies. Sears is being beaten by Amazon, GE is being beaten by Tesla and all these new sort of upstarts. Amazon is destroying. But even technology companies are not immune to the change. You know, the fact is that nobody seems to trust Facebook anymore. In fact, some would argue that Facebook is the reason why Donald Trump won the last election, which is very, very worrying. And there's a lot of anger. Elizabeth Warren, who wants to be the next Democratic candidate, she believes that we need to break up these big organizations like Google and Facebook. So they're not alone. Change is widespread, even for companies that are technology first or digital first. There's a really good book I'd recommend you all read. It's by a gentleman called Thomas Friedman. Thomas Friedman wrote a book called The World is Flat, you know, about globalization. And, you know, in Brazil, I noticed as I walked down, there's a lot of shops in Brazil, isn't there? I think everybody's always shopping or drinking here, it seems. As I walk down the road, I see the same products in your stores than in America. And I'm like, oh, that's but cheaper, so I'm all in. I'm great. So the point is that we live in this sort of global economy, right? And he wrote about it with The World is Flat. And he talks about three things that are fundamentally changing society. He starts off with the market, digital globalization, the fact that your car has been to more places than you've been. You know, the transmission, well, that came from Mexico. The sound system, well, that's German. Why would you buy anything else? The tires, well, they came from France. I don't know why you'd buy them anywhere else. I mean, French tires. You know, the brake pads, well, they came from England because we're brilliant at stopping, you know, sort of. And in the rain, we've got a lot of practice, right? So the point is that we live in this digital globalized economy, right? And then Mother Nature. So I was talking to a bunch of old geezers here, old people here, older people more my age, which seems to be the unusual thing in this city. I was talking to some of them, and they said, saying, oh, isn't the weather lovely? And they said, oh, Dave, no. The weather, the weather's completely different than it was 15 years ago. And when I was a kid, you know, we still had snow and mammoths walking around. The climate has changed here in São Paulo. I was like, wow, I didn't know that. But it's true that the climate is changing, and it's having huge effects. You know, 1 billion people will not have access to water within the next 10 years because the Himalayan melt is stopping. Climate change is a reality, but also coupled with that is population change. The fact that 1 billion people, you know, in Africa are in the millennial age group, you know, that sort of age group, and none of them have got jobs, which is kind of worrying, right? You know, the fact that we live in a world where there's mass migration. You saw that in Venezuela, everybody's trying to get into Peru at the moment. That happened this morning because they're about to close the border. The world is changing in terms of demographics and in terms of location. You know, Brazil has an amazing young population. You know, in America, we're getting a bit older, you know, and now we've closed the borders, it's really going to get really old. And then technology. So these three things, I'm not going to bore you with technology. We all know that it was Valentine's Day, right, on Wednesday. I know a lot of people came to spend it with me, which was odd, but and then came up to me afterwards and said, I need a photo to prove I wasn't out with my girlfriend. I was like, great, you know. That was fun. Anyway, but Valentine's Day, a lot of people were giving cards, and some of them, the people that, you know, like to annoy others, build those cards that open and then play songs, you know, like a calaca, like, you know, that sort of stuff. You know that uses more computing power than put a man on the moon? Isn't that crazy? That you've got this computing power that you literally just throw away that we use to get a man on Apollo 11 to the moon. Amazing. So the world is changing. The world is different. A really, really, really good Venezuelan economist called Kalida Perez, she, you know, before this week, I'd have said that name completely differently, but I've been surrounded by Brazilians saying, you know, it's great. And now I can say Kalida Perez, and I sound almost, you're going to say, you sound like an Englishman saying Kalida Perez, don't you? But Kalida Perez, she's this fantastic, fantastic economist, and she writes about the changing of age. She's written a really good book that if you have trouble sleeping, you should buy. It's really hard to read. It's an economist, right? But she talks we're entering this fifth age. We're somewhere over here, right? Now she doesn't call it age of software and digital. She calls it the CCPT. It's got this really long economist kind name for it. But I've sort of like shortened it to be it's the age of software or the digital age, right? In this sort of phase. Now, some of you may be looking at the other like little areas here and saying, my God, every time this happened, there was mass destruction, wars, and everybody died. Yeah, historically, when we've moved into the golden age of any technology innovation, there's been a massive amount of death. Yeah, that's kind of disappointing, isn't it? You know, like the Napoleonic Wars, the Civil War in the United States of America, and then, of course, the World Wars in Europe and the rest of the world. So, yeah, there has been some depressing things, but she's right about this. And what's interesting, as we enter this age, and I'm sort of paraphrasing a lot of her work and trying to put it into our terminology, so I apologize, and if she was here, she'd probably shout at me. But she's in London, so we can do this. So if we move from the age of oil and mass production, these are some of the characteristics of that age, to this age of software and digital. Long-term investment planning. You know, when you're planning a massive plant or factory, the investment model is incredibly complicated, the way in which you realize capital investment, the way in which you fund it. Now, frankly, if you're funding modern digital innovation, you've used the Google way, right? You do this sort of like Google Ventures model where you fund it every year. To such an extent that they fund their energy projects in this way. So they have this huge energy organization, and they're funding like the creation of cold fusion reactors and solar arrays in an annual cycle because they're trying to make sure that they're funding it in the, learning as they go to make sure they're making the right choices. Short-term profit is very much a product of today. Remember, the quarter is king, right? But long-term value is something that we increasingly think about. We think about how we can realize this person, this relationship we have with a customer over the life of the customer. So you see a lot of changes around that efficiency. You know that the industrial age is all about efficiency. One of the problems that we have when we're talking about agile to managers of the old guard, they talk about, well, how do we know this is the most efficient way of delivering the product? We say we don't. We really don't. In fact, we don't really care. I mean, we kind of care because we're always trying to improve, but what we care about is delivering value and learning. We want to do the right thing rather than the bad thing well. We want to do the right thing rather than a very efficient bad thing, which is what industrial age is all about. Specialization of labor, the specialist jobs. I am a widget creator. That's Taylorism, or Henry Ford created that idea. The fact that he could take somebody off the fields in America in the end of the 1800s, 1900s, and actually bring them into a factory and get them working within an hour. Specialization of labor. And that's been replaced with cross-functional teams. Efficiencies were replaced with innovation. Process control has been replaced with self-organization and decentralization, pushing things down. And management is king in the old world, the rise of the creator. Another great book that Thomas Friedman wrote was That Used to Be Us. It was a book about the demise of the American way, which is kind of a depressing title and didn't sell very well. But in it, he describes this new kind of role, this creator role, the creator. I look around this room and I see a lot of creators. I walk down a street in Brazil and people creating when you really don't need it. You know, there's a lot of creation going on. There was, you had a little bit of a strike yesterday. Barry and I wandered up to the end of it. It was a lot of, people were building things and creating things and painting things. I'm sure they were saying rude things, but it was kind of creation. Creators are key, right? Creators are the future. Organizations ultimately provide an environment for those creators to create, to deliver value, to solve problems. It's an incredible change that we're seeing. Managers are no longer the most important role in an organization. We don't have people marrying together or gluing together the processes of many different specialists. Instead, we have cross-functional teams who are focused on customer outcomes and are given the freedom to create that value. That's the future. So if you're going to use some sort of metaphor, some sort of analogy, you're going to have some sort of a T-shirt printed, you would say we're moving from this to this. We're moving from a factory industrial psyche to something that looks more organic and responsive. We respond to the environment. We move rapidly. The idea is we're relatively small. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. We're relatively small. So how do we move to this world? What are the sort of characteristics of the environment that we have to create? We all know it's Scrum, Agile at the team level. We all know about those things. But how do we create a culture to build this sort of agile, organic environment inside organizations. And that's what I'm hoping to share some thoughts with. Now, is there 5, 10, 17, 27 things that we're going to be talking about? I don't know. There's 5 things that I decided to pick because of the time box that I was allocated. One is around leadership. The role of managers are changing, evolving as we move into the age of Agile and we start to support these more creative creators, as it were. But ultimately, we still have a role for leadership. And leadership is incredibly important, incredibly important. And so we need to do something different, though, with leadership, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We need to support self-organization in a very, very intelligent and mindful way. Self-organizing doesn't just happen because you tell it to happen. Self-organization happens if you create an environment and it blossoms. It's like a flower. We have to think about outcomes around portfolios. We have to remove waste to free these teams and teams of teams to deliver value. And then we need to measure. Measurement is key. So let's start at number 1 around how we create this strong leadership. Let's start and talk a little bit about that. So, okay, I've got something to admit, which is kind of embarrassing considering I spend my entire life wandering the world telling people about this thing. Scrum is really simple. So my wife is, she looks after our children at the moment, but she used to be in pharmaceuticals. She's a biologist, got an MBA. She's a very smart, amazing, beautiful woman. I think she was drugged when she met me. I'm not totally sure. And I'm hoping it doesn't wear off, but so I keep just buying her things, hoping that distracts her. I find that strategy works well, gentlemen, just for the thing. Anyway, so she says, Dave, what do you do? You know, you ever have that conversation? What's this Scrum thing? Is it about rugby? No, it really isn't, love. So I explained to her Scrum. I say, Scrum is basically a very simple set of ideas based on 3 underlying principles. Empiricism, or scientific method. She goes, oh, you mean learn by doing, get rapid feedback? I said, yes, you got it. She goes, oh, yeah, I understand that, yeah. And then self-organization, you allow teams to, because you don't know the problem you're solving, you can't tell them how to work, so you allow them to self-organize, decide the role. She goes, oh, that's interesting, yeah. So like a team would define, she's a coach and a personal trainer as well. And she goes, oh, like how we sit around and we talk about how the team works, and the best teams work when you allow them some freedom and you allow people to I said, yeah. And then continuous improvement. She goes, oh, yeah, like you should always be focused on getting better. I'm always focused on you getting better, Dave, she says. And I'm like, oh, great. I have a list of things that you do really badly that we need to improve. I'm like, yeah, let's not talk about that, honey. But she goes, she said, yeah, and? I said, no, that's it. That's what Scrum's based on. Well, that's really, really blooming simple, isn't it? She said. Why do you spend your entire life telling people about it? I'm like, well, because I tell some jokes. She goes, yeah, good. Anyway, so we get into this conversation about how simple it is. And Scrum is really, really simple. It's an embarrassment that we still are having trouble with it. And we'll talk a bit more about why that we have so much trouble in a second. But Scrum is really, really simple. Now, to do Scrum well requires you to have discipline. To do Scrum well requires you to have a value system that allows transparency and trust to manifest itself through psychological safety. To do Scrum well requires you to be maniacally focused on a customer outcome. To do Scrum well requires you to help people get better, because not only will that help you, but ultimately it will help the entire environment to accept Scrum. But that is at the heart of what Scrum is. But without those values, it's incredibly hard to practice. So Scrum has 5 values: courage, focus, commitment, respect, openness. Now, does it have to be those 5? I don't really care what values you pick. The outcome that I seek with the values is psychological safety. The outcome I seek with the values is an environment for empiricism to work. The outcome I seek with the values is self-organization being effective. The outcome I seek with the values is an environment that allows people to improve it continuously and gives them the freedom to do it. Courage, the desire and the ability to stand up and say, hey, I don't like this, or I think this is good, or I kind of let you all down. I was embarrassed. Focus, the idea that we focus on one thing, not because it's the only thing that's important, but because we want to get something done. The idea of commitment, not that we're committed to an outcome, but we're committed to the process. We trust the idea of empiricism. We trust our team. We're committed to each other to deliver value. Respect, the idea that we are kind and respectful for everybody. Kindness is fundamental to Scrum working well and Agile working well. And in fact, what's really, really interesting is we did a study with McKinsey. You know, so McKinsey, some of you may know them. They're this boutique, very large management consulting company that helps organizations change, helps countries change. I think it's being sued by Chile at the moment. You know, it's a really interesting organization. We work with them. They're very into Agile, and we work with them quite closely on a number of ideas. And one of them was about Agile personalities. And we did a big survey, and we got some data, and we compared. They did a really good job working with us, turning it into some findings. One thing that we found that was kind of odd was around psychological safety and agreeableness. We found that modern teams need to have an environment that is psychologically safe, no surprise there, and one of the important traits is agreeableness. Yes and, not yes but. You listen more than you talk. I'm not very good at that, by the way, as you can imagine. But you listen more than you talk. I think that's also on my wife's list of improvements for me. You listen more than you talk. You ask questions of people to understand their point of view rather than telling them they're wrong. Now, you could call that respect. You call that kindness. You could call that being a good human being, in my opinion. But respect is fundamental, and openness, a willingness to share, a willingness to become uncomfortable sometimes, sharing things when they go wrong, sharing things where you misunderstood something, sharing things when you feel uncomfortable. There's a really good, some of you may have heard this, there's a PST called Dave Dame. Dave Dame is paraplegic. He's in a wheelchair. He's an awesome guy. He's also a little bit rude. He sort of like uses being in a wheelchair to get away with telling really rude jokes, which I think is awesome as well. He talks about the ability of managers now, or leaders, to basically be a little bit outside their comfort zone. Because he says he's always outside his comfort zone. Every time he sees a staircase, you can imagine what that's like when you're in a wheelchair. He's always a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit embarrassed. And he talks a lot about that. But these values create an environment that agility can thrive, that Scrum can thrive. Unfortunately, though, the reality is that these values are always being undermined by the culture of an organization. And as Peter Drucker says, he says culture eats strategy for breakfast. I kind of like put agile for breakfast. You know, culture. Now, culture is magic, by the way. Magic meaning we don't really understand stuff inside an organization of why things happen, so we call it culture. We could have equally called it magic, by the way, but magic doesn't sell books, apparently, unless you're Harry Potter or whatever, yeah? So we have to, unfortunately, call it culture. Culture. These set of behaviors, these set of things in an organization. You know, the reason why on a Friday everybody wears jeans, you know, culture. You know, the reason why everybody goes to the canteen at the same time, you know, culture. These things get in the way of Agile. And the other thing that's really interesting about Agile and about trying to adopt these values is that ultimately when you sit people in a room and say, hey, this is how we need to be because of these reasons. They go, yeah, totally get it. Totally get it. We need to change everybody else. No. We need to be all changing. He goes, oh, yeah, but I'm fine. Change is great if you're talking about somebody else. In fact, our PST community, our professional Scrum trainer community, there's, I think, 7 of them here today, and they're awesome. They're best agilistas in the world. We're very fortunate to have them in our community. But try changing them. They're like, whoa, no. You're like, well, hang on a minute. You change other people every day. Oh, yeah, that's other people. It's hard, right? This is Senge's quote, but they do, and that's the thing. So, some important truths that you know, but I just wanted to remind you about leadership now in this modern world to drive these values in. What people do is more important than what people say. So start acting these values. Be courageous, be open, be vulnerable, be respectful. Start demonstrating these values and say, yeah, I got this wrong. Hey, what do you listen to people more actively? Make an effort to be different. Demonstrate that difference to your teams. Demonstrate that difference to your boss. Behave in a different way than you would. So when your boss says, how are we going to do this? Say, I don't know, but I've got a group of people that can help me find an answer. He's like, well, no, I implore you to know. Hang on a minute. I'm being honest and truthful to you. I'm going to come back to you with an answer, but I can't now, for instance. Start living the talk. But words are important. Though we say, and this is another bald gentleman. His name was Buddha. Had a little bit of a belly. This is a good saying that makes me realize the reason why we read the Scrum Guide and the reason why we put the values on the wall. So one thing, I walked around a lot of offices over the last few days. I managed to navigate many security systems into buildings. It's amazing how you have to have a badge, and then you have to give the badge to somebody else, and then they give you another badge, and then you go in. It's kind of confusing. I'm sure it works very effectively. So I've visited a lot of really cool buildings. And one thing that I was struck from was you've got great visual boards. There's some things you could do a bit better. Maybe start looking at some Kanban practices like WIP limits. There was definitely a little bit of mini waterfall I saw. So maybe you want to limit work in progress on certain parts of your board. Maybe you want to break up each swim lane into 2. But generally, you had awesome boards. What was missing, though, was a couple of things. And one thing that was missing was the values. One thing that I try to encourage every Scrum team that I work with is to put the values up on the wall. Not the values from the Scrum poster, but your values. What does respect mean for you? How can we have an example? And I use Post-it notes to put examples on those values every retrospective. How did we demonstrate respect? How did we do that? Because the thought manifests as a word, right? Respect. The word manifests as a deed. We're nice, kind, and understanding to our people. The deed develops into a habit. We're now respectful not just for the people that we work with on a day-to-day basis, but the people we don't work with on a day-to-day basis. That the habit hardens into character and culture in our organization. Those things are really important. Now, little thing about Brazil. One thing that blew me away was the flatness of your organizations. That may be totally from what I observed. The ability to, your executives talk to your, developers, talk to your cleaners. I know you have a very flat culture in that way, which I really, really liked, which helps this greatly. But also, naturally, and this again might be just because you were being nice in front of, like Daddy Scrum comes into town, but you were really kind to each other. There was hugging, there was kissing, and that was just the Ben. Yeah, sorry. You were nice. I was a little shocked for a minute. Obviously I've just recently spent a lot of time in Germany. So I'm like, this does not happen. We normally write letters to each other when we want to exchange pleasantries. I think one of the reasons that Brazil is going to get agile so well is because of this culture. I think this is, and I'm sure you have your moments where you're not kind, and I'm sure everybody can be assholes once in a while, right? Not me. But honestly, the natural approach is, and I think maybe it's because I don't know why actually, but this really proves that I reckon the culture is ripe. Now, you've got lots of other problems, but this is definitely something I think we can do. Being kind, being respectful, and creating those values and driving it home. But don't forget it. Don't sit on your Brazilian laurels and go, yeah, we're brilliant at this. Let's have a hug. Remember about it. So write it down. Put those Post-it notes. Continually exercise this muscle because you're going to get better. And you know what happens? It's not just at work then. Suddenly at home, things are a bit better. And then that home stuff bleeds into work stuff, and then everybody's just smiling and having a good time. Having a good time delivering value. Yes, dealing with problems, but dealing it with a respectful way. So, to summarize, you need to all become leaders. This isn't about executives. Yes, they have to do it as well. But you need to define shared goals to help you. So one of the most important things about leadership, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, is trying to define a goal. The reason why we're respectful and supportive of each other isn't because we just want to be better human beings. It's because we want to build a transparent environment to learn together fast. Make it safe for people to be who they need to be to deliver value. Create a psychological safety is fundamental for Agile to be successful. Psychological safety is not out of the box natural. Brazil probably has a better chance than others, but honestly, hierarchies, people, anger, trying to control, trying to hoard knowledge removes psychological safety. And the best way of driving change into the organization is to model a change. Now, I don't know, there's lots of great workshops on and lots of great sessions, but there's one session by Barry Overham around Zombie Scrum. One thing that you'll discover very quickly when you work with Barry is he does this, and you accidentally sort of get into this mindset with him. He doesn't tell you, his ego, even though he's one of the smartest guys I've met, his ego does not get in the way. He doesn't tell you things, he allows you to tell him things, and he just sort of redirects. It's really cool. And coaching is a part of that. Anyway, but I'll move on in time. So leaders make a difference, and you're all leaders. That's very important. Number 2, don't worry, only 17 more to go. Number 2, help teams and stakeholders self-organize. Well, that's easy. You just get them into a room, get them drunk, and just say, sort it out, and then leave. Works every time. Maybe it doesn't. The drunk stuff does, but nothing else. So it's hard, right? The organizational structures that you are working to were designed for the industrial age, right? They were designed for the previous age, the age of mass production. You work in an organization that's structured, and probably successfully, initially, around this mass production paradigm where change is the enemy, where risk should be avoided at all costs, where conformity wins. And actually, there's a gentleman called Dr. John Kotter from Harvard. He writes about change management, right? That you may have used a 7 or 8 step Kotter change model. It's a very famous one. And I was fortunate enough to listen to some of his work with Ken and talk to him about this. And one thing that's he basically says we need to fundamentally change how work is organized. But he also says in parallel that it's really hard to do that. And organizations are continuously fighting this. So one of the biggest challenges that we all have is how to transition. If you're building an organization from the ground up, it's pretty easy. You would build it around teams. You would then start adding, services to support those teams. You would then start, those teams would be directed to customers. It's pretty straightforward. But taking an organization that breaks work down and makes it efficiently delivered across a value stream, trying to move one to the other is pretty challenging. At the heart of this change is this move to teams. And part of the reason why teams are so important is the environment they create for people. In fact, that's all they pretty much do. They create an environment that helps people be more motivated. It helps them focus on the problems. Now, some of you may have read Drive, The Surprising Truth What Motivates Us by Dan Pink. Dan Pink's an interesting guy. You don't need to read the book, just watch the TED Talk. You'll get everything out of it. Don't quote me on that. And if you're videoing this, Dan, I'm definitely sorry. They should still buy the book, obviously. He's an awesome speaker. Yeah. But he talks about intrinsic motivation, biological motivation, and extrinsic motivation. The kind of work that teams and people in modern organizations are focused on, the kind of work that you do on a day-to-day basis, does not benefit from extrinsic or biological motivation. You're not trying to put food on the table, generally. That's kind of like table stakes, right? Maybe some of these rewards, these short-term rewards help, but generally it doesn't. This is the world that we live in. And what's interesting is one of the contexts around this, one of the contexts around trying to create this sort of motivated set of teams working together is the fact that modern organizations have flipped. And this is really, really important. Now, when I was growing up, the most important person was a manager, and then a manager, and manager. And my grandma, I lived with my grandparents. My grandmother told me, she was very excited when I became a manager. I was actually a team lead. She was really excited about that. And that's the sort of journey that we took. If you were at Scrum Day nights on Valentine's Day, you would have heard me talk a little bit about that change and the like. So I'm not going to go into detail about this. Ultimately, the world that we live in today is not that. The most important people in an organization are creators aligned to customers. Creators aligned to the customers that the organization has. Richard Branson probably says it best, right? Take care of your employees. Take care of your employees that serve customers most. If you do that, everything else gets easy. They do the right thing. So honestly, the most important people in the organization are those delivery teams, those creators that live there. The managers help them, and the CEO ultimately helps the manager. That's it. That's how organizations are structured. That means we're not this kind of organization. And that's why you see McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group talking about ripping out massive chunks of middle management. Ford just laid off 8,000 people. The majority of those were middle managers. Because not that they don't have amazing skills, they may do, but not as a manager anymore. They may be more focused on customers now, they might be enabling this environment, but they won't be managing in the same way. To create self-organization, you have to create an environment for everybody, not just the team. You need respect, you need shared values, you need goals, you need commitments. Commitments in terms of you can trust each other. Not commitments are we're going to get this done, but a commitment is we're going to try to get this done and we're going to tell you as soon as we know we can't get this done. So it's creating a trust sort of environment. You need to have boundaries. Boundaries are super important to facilitate self-organization. And you need working agreements. Working agreements either on the wall, which are obviously the working agreements I like, or working agreements that are sort of more tacit than that. But ultimately, you have to know how to work together in an effective way. Now, notice that applies to the development team, the Scrum Master, and the product owner, but it also applies to the stakeholders. If you want to facilitate and enable self-organization, the people that these teams work with also need to understand that in a way that allows them to create an environment. So instead of always going to Bob, instead of always going to John, they allow the team to take control of its own destiny. But there's lots of things that get in the way, and perhaps the most important things are the first three things there. Bonuses, career, and reporting, or bonuses, promotion, and reporting structures. Self-organization works brilliantly until you start saying, well, hang on, we've got individual KPIs, or hang on, we promote individuals on their contribution, or hang on, you have to report your daily, every month, or we have a one-on-one where you report your status. It works brilliantly until you start focusing on individuals. Now, America is maniacal about individualism. And when you talk about breaking up the bonus model, so it's team-based, they describe you as a communist, or a socialist, actually, which apparently is worse than a communist. Who knew? Anyway, they're like, is your name Bernie or something? And I'm like, no, but hang on a minute. So this is a complex piece of work, right? They go, yeah. And that requires a team, a cross-discipline set of individuals to work together to deliver value. Yeah. Okay, so how about we measure them as a team? No. What? Well, somebody might not pull their way. They might not do enough work. You might have lazy people that in America, being lazy is, you have to beat them frequently with sticks. And I'm like, well, who cares? If the team's happy, no, that will never work. So there was a large financial, when we're on video, I have to be a little bit more discreet than when we're in smaller groups, but there's a large financial institution in the Boston area that have been adopting Scrum. They were the second company ever to do Scrum. And frankly, they've never really succeeded. They've got a lot of benefits out of Scrum, and they've definitely delivered a lot of value, and they've got great products, but they've never got to that next level. And the reason why they've never got to that next level primarily is because 60% of their salary or their take-home is based on a bonus. That bonus is dependent on an individual, on an individual set of KPIs that has a manager that determines if you pass those KPIs. Those KPIs are written by that manager. That manager usually isn't in your work stream. So that basically means there's always going to be a conflict of interest. In fact, to such an extent that individuals were on multiple Scrum teams, all working differently, all to a set of different agendas and objectives. And guess what? They never, ever got the value out of the Scrum teams that they actually wanted. And that's the other problem that we see with self-organization when individuals are on multiple. We love teams so much we put you on 20 of them. You know, we love teams, right? So that kind of gets in the way of self-organization. It certainly gets in the way of psychological safety, and it certainly gets in the way of focus. So all of these things can get in the way of self-organization. Self-organization is incredibly hard, but we're starting to see that change. There's a large bank in Charlotte that has the same name as the country, so you might better work that out yourself. And they're going all in to this model of working. So they've realigned their business around value streams. Over 1,000 people are involved in these value streams. And they have this big planning meeting once a quarter. It's a PI planning. They are using SAFe, or they're sort of using SAFe-ish. And what they do is they get everybody into this convention center and allow teams to reorganize based on the objectives. They allow people to move teams. And you see them. You see them moving. And then the HR systems afterwards are a nightmare, apparently. But they see them moving from team to team during it. Now, it's not much movement. There's only a limited amount of movement. Maybe because there's more UX in this particular sprint or this particular PI, this program increment. You're going to see some UX people move into these teams, or maybe the security's become more of an issue, or maybe because there's a back-end system. You see some movement. And you see these runners running around talking about that. And you see the Scrum Masters trying to facilitate using liberating structures or something, the process. And you see that all happening with 1,000 people. It's amazing. They spend about $250,000 every quarter to do this, about 250,000. It's amazing. So you can do it. So there is hope. So we can change. The other way to do it is cheating. We call it hacking the organization, creating a separate digital foundry or digital studio inside the organization. And then we take a value stream from the old organization, we take it in and we say, the old organization just provides services to us. We're going to build it. And that works really, really, really well. But unfortunately, there's a problem with this. The old organization, when they realize these people are being successful, they then start sending out the police to start, smashing the windows and breaking stuff. The antibodies of the old organization set to work. The old organization usually provides services for this organization. Maybe it's some back-end services. Maybe there's an interface that connects this new thing to this old thing. And they start, oh, no, we can't do that. Oh, no, you can't release without, governance says no. Compliance gets involved. They start slowly breaking this. And the reason why is because these studios tend to be super successful. And as soon as that success translates into the executives going, wow, have you seen what Bob's doing over there? They start fighting them. They start burning it. So it can be very problematic. Now, Kotter would say that this is the future of your organization, and this needs to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And obviously, many of the antibody problems that I just described can be mitigated with leadership. Leadership can get in the way and start saying, no, you need to provide that service to these guys, or slowly moving more stuff into this org. However, my experience is this can be kind of challenging. So the third thing. So if number one was about leadership, creating these values for psychological safety, creating this sort of environment for success. Number two is about self-organization. The third one is around outcomes. The majority of the stuff that your team works on never gets used. Now, some of the reason why it never gets used is because it's exception processing. And it's good that it never gets used. It's like the nuclear alarm in the US. We have this system that basically gives a 2 or 4 minute warning, depending on who you believe, that says nuclear bombs are coming. Now, we hope that that never gets used, right? So, but unfortunately, many of the things that you create are actually meant to be used and are never used. This is Cutter. They have this model where they say 70% of the 15 minutes, cool. 70% of the stuff is never going to be used, right? I don't think it's quite bad, but the other thing that's really is bad, and this is another set of data, is that some of the services that you provide makes things worse. Some of it does absolutely nothing, and a very small percentage makes things better. We see that over and over again. So that is the reason why we do empiricism. Because when we start a project, or we start a product, or we start doing work on a product, we don't know which, even though we think very sensibly that if we offer this service, everybody's going to use it. And then nobody does, right? That's embarrassing. So the only way that we have to accept that. We have to say, okay, we think, this is a hypothesis, this is the outcome that we want to achieve, and these are the things we're going to do. Let's work empirically to do that. Let's start thinking about our backlog, not in terms of work, our product backlog, not our sprint backlog. Our product backlog, not in terms of work, but in terms of outcomes. Now, that's actually much easier to say than do, so I'm very glad I'm here and not there. Because you go through your backlog when you get back on Monday, or Tuesday if you have a really good Sunday, I don't know. But when you go back into the office, have a look at your backlog and go, okay, so what does it say? Oh, we're going to update these screens. We're going to, why are we updating these screens? Well, because we were told to. Well, what's the outcome we're seeking? I don't know. Do you know? No, I don't know. Bob might know. Where's Bob? Oh, he's on vacation. All right. Suddenly you realize quite quickly as you start inspecting your product backlog that actually there's a lot on there that nobody knows why. Particularly if some of those things are aged. Particularly if some of those things have been there for a while. Particularly if you've not got a product backlog but a crap log, really. Now, let's be careful. So, it's always funny with translators, there's laughs on different times. It's kind of, yeah. Or is it just a translator saying, he's told another one of those stupid English jokes again? Oh, laugh so that we look polite. Okay. That's what it's like in China, by the way. Anyway, so how about going through your backlog and looking for outcome opportunities? It's hard. One way of helping you do this is personas. So for my visits, I identified one thing, which was put your values on the board. The other thing is personas. If I come back to Brazil in a year or two, whenever I come back next time, hopefully it will be sooner, I want to go around to the same teams and I want to see personas on the wall. I want everybody in the team to know about the customer. I want personas. Because it's so motivating. Remember Dan Pink talked about intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation. He talks about 3 things. Purpose is one of them. Autonomy, mastery, purpose are the 3. Purpose is one of them. Purpose, right? Purpose is aligned in context. Knowing why you're doing something makes sure not only you do the right thing, but it motivates you to do it, right? We're not putting a widget on a screen because we want to put a widget on the screen. We're putting a widget on the screen because it adds some value to the customer journey. We're putting a widget on the screen because it helps a customer deal with something. It makes their life better. We're putting a widget on the screen because of some security issue about GDPR or privacy or something. So there's a legal implication to but we want to know why we're doing stuff. I recommend thinking about personas and describing your opportunities in your backlog. But beware hippos. They're highly paid people that have an opinion. Hippos. They come in and they say, people like me actually, who come in and go, I know nothing about anything, but I don't like that one. That's the most important thing. Trust the system, commit to the system, and avoid these guys. Do you know hippos actually kill more people in Africa than lions? That's an interesting fact. because apparently they hang out at the same place that people have to get water from, and apparently hippos are a bit grumpy, particularly in the morning. So it looks a bit like me in the morning, actually. So you have to be aware of these people. Highly paid person's opinions. Beware of those. And the best way of being aware of those things is to make sure that the outcome and the value that you achieve, the outcome that you're seeking, is clearly described in a way that makes sure that this person cannot override it because it's obvious. We're doing this because this is more valuable than this, isn't it? And they go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you're in a good position. Okay, I'm conscious of time. Systematic review sources of waste. We all know this. This is boring. This is so important. Oh, yeah. Oh, hang on. Let's go back. This is so important in Scrum. We actually put it so that we have an event called retrospective. And a retrospective should identify at least one thing that we can improve. We care about improvements so much, we built an event and some words around it. And we don't do that normally. So, but one other area of waste is cross-dependencies. 10 minutes, good, get it? So dependencies kill agility. So how do we manage dependencies in an agile environment? We maniacally focus on removing them or making them massively transparent. The best way of managing dependencies in a transparent way is via verification or continuous integration. The idea that you bring everybody together and you make everything super transparent. You also, when we are planning, try to outplan these devils. One of the reasons why Bank of America, the bank in Charlotte does such a good job of managing dependencies across 1,200 people, across 100 teams, is because what they do is when there's a dependency, instead of actually being dependent on another team, they may move the person onto the other team so that they then can take control of it. Managing dependencies is crucial. Dependencies reduce capability. An interesting story, scale reduces agility. So SpaceX, Elon Musk's sort of like magical trip to the moon, guess how many. Now, some people know this because I've told them it before. How many people, software engineers, they have in their core rocket systems teams? 34. NASA had 5,000. 34. When I asked the guy that runs that engineering, or I briefly sort of asked him, he said, well, I think we could probably do with 36. It's still not a lot. So why have you got 5,000 people working on your insurance claims system? Why is there 10,000 people? Oh, it's complicated. Okay, it's not rocket science. So waste occurs forever. So the other thing that I want you to do to your Scrum boards, one other thing that I want you to do to your Scrum boards is each column needs to be 2. One column is when you're working, one line is when you're working on something, and one line when it's finished, waiting for the next phase to allow it in. So the idea is, so say it's coding and testing. Just pretend that they're the 2 lines. So when it moves out of being coded, it probably has a wait, right? Before it moves into testing. Well, ideally not. But if it does, show that transparently on your Scrum board. Waste is important. And in fact, what we find is that waste happens everywhere. Waste happens in terms of what we build, waste happens in terms of how we build it, and waste happens in terms of who works together to do it. One interesting exercise in the retrospective is to use a thing like this to say, hey, so let's talk about what. Were we in the last sprint working on the most important stuff? They said, well, yeah, maybe, yeah, now no. Okay, so how do we avoid working on the least, not so important stuff next sprint? Did we work effectively as a team? Should there have been other people that we weren't involved in? Or was there some dependencies? And then what practices were we using? Is there anything we can do better there? Now, the Scrum Guide, this is an important point about adopting Agile. Scrum is very much focused on getting better, right? This is taken directly from the Scrum Guide. However, we also need to get better as an organization. A lot of organizations adopt Scrum at the team level, great, but they don't use Scrum to adopt Scrum across the enterprise. Use Agile to implement Agile, ladies and gentlemen. That means that you need to have a change team. That means you need to have KPIs identified, and it needs that an enterprise change to be managed in an agile way. So you can imagine teams inside here providing impediments up to a backlog that's being managed at the enterprise way. Use agile to implement agile. It's a complex system. Why wouldn't you? Okay, so we talked about, hang on, I know we've got like 7 minutes or something. So number 1, we talked about leadership and values, creating an environment. Number 2, what was that about? We talked about waste just now. We talked about outcomes. We talked about basically changing the dialogue around how we work. Now, number 5 is around measurement. To be empirical, you need to measure. Measurement is fundamental. You need to a lot of people adopt agile without measuring. So you say, why are you doing agile? And they say, because we want to do agile. You say, no. Why? Because we want to be more responsive. Why? Because we want to deliver time to market. So you want to deliver more features to market faster. Yeah. And we want to deliver the right features to market faster. And so how do we measure that? We want to increase quality. How do we measure that? We want to, whatever those things are. Measurement is crucial. So we need to basically put in place this. The idea to customer, we need to measure economic value in an effective way. We need to measure it in a consistent way. So that means that not only do we have to think about outcomes, we need to have those outcomes measurable. One way of expressing a measurable outcome is via a hypothesis. So each of our backlog items, or certainly the epics, or maybe a collection of backlog items, could bring in some sort of hypothesis. We believe that doing these or these set of things for these people, for these personas, will achieve this outcome. We will know it's true when we can get this measure. Start understanding hypothesis. Now, this is actually really hard. At Scrum.org, we do a lot of experiments. Now, sometimes we're not as disciplined as we should be. We realize after we've been running an experiment for a while that we actually weren't measuring it. We didn't know why we were doing it. We were doing it because we just used it to say yes, really. So increasingly, we are now starting to adopt this kind of measurement. And this is from Lean UX. If you're really into Lean UX, recently we worked with Jeff and Josh to build a class called Professional Scrum with UX. It's pretty awesome because it teaches you how to use the techniques of Lean UX and sense and respond at the sprint level, which is cool. It's changed my life. It's made me fundamentally reshape our backlog at Scrum.org to make it around customers, to make it around outcomes, and to make it measurable. This is an example of one. I'm not going to bore you with that. I think you can work it out. Most important thing is there's measures in it. Time spent following up on claims drops, and patient NPS increases. There's a measure that we can get to. And that means that we use these outcomes to plan the sprints. That means that we use these outcomes to have a better conversation with our product owner, and the product owner to have a better conversation with his or her stakeholders. That means that we have a really good mechanism for sprint reviews. Now, some people think of sprint reviews as a phase gate to releasing to production. It's not. Sprint reviews are an opportunity to inspect and adapt the product increment, the work, to see if we've achieved something so we can learn it, so we can plan. Hopefully, we've released stuff during that sprint that allows us to bring that information back into our sprint review. The best sprint reviews are done with real data from real customers. That's the best sprint reviews. Wow, kind of shot through the end ones. So, outcome-based measurement is fundamental. Systematically removing waste throughout your life cycle gives the freedom for the teams to deliver value. Managing your portfolio and your backlog in terms of outcomes, not work. I don't want to see work on your product backlog. Your sprint backlog, yeah, we definitely need work there. But on your product backlog, I want to see outcomes. I want to see the why. We want to ensure self-organization and for the teams by creating an environment that allows self-organization to flourish. And that isn't just the teams, it's the environment that they live in. And then we need leadership to create that psychological safety. So you might say, my God, all those things are kind of related. And that's no surprise, they are. Ultimately, the most important thing about Scrum, one of the most important thing about agility is creating an environment to do empiricism, self-organization, continuous improvement. To do that effectively means you have to focus on your customer or your outcome. To do that effectively, you need to have a value system that promotes freedom of psychological safety to happen. To do that effectively, you need to be disciplined and committed to trusting the process and not being changed by hippos and others. And to do that effectively, you need to help others. One thing we haven't talked much about, and I know 1 minute or whatever, we haven't talked, I'm always in trouble. That's also on my wife's list, by the way. One thing we haven't talked about is another part of Agile at scale, or another success metric for agility. To scale Agile, you can't adopt a framework or a set of books or a set of practices. They're important, but that isn't how you scale Agile. How you scale Agile is by helping others. People that get Agile should help people that don't get Agile. Those people then become advocates for Agile and they help others. The way that we scale the ideas that I just talked about, the concepts of empiricism, self-organization, continuous improvement, the practices, whether it's persona mapping or customer journeys or story points or whatever, is by helping others do it. So the last important ingredient for fundamental change in an organization, in a team, in a society is others helping others. So the other thing that I want to see when I come back in a year, I want to see scrum boards. We're broken down into 2 things in each swim lane. I want to see your values on the board and examples of when you delivered it. I want to see personas on the board so we know who our customer is. The last element for success, and I think in Brazil and in São Paulo, I think you're in a very good position to do this because of who you are, and because of the culture of this country and the culture of this city, is help others. There's about 650 people here, right? 650 people that can start this change in every organization. 50 people, sorry, my teeth fell out for a moment. 650 people that can go to somebody that isn't here and say, hey, so when you were having fun on Saturday? Well, I was having fun, but it was a different fun. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Here's 2 things I think we can do together to help you and us deliver more value. That's your mission, right, ladies and gentlemen? That's how we can change the world. And I think it's a world that if we change it, we can solve all those problems, all that climate change, or that we can solve every problem that the world has in front of it if we work together as teams and teams of teams. And the only way we can do that is to help each other. So that's the last element of my story. There wasn't a slide for it. Hopefully this has been enjoyable. Hopefully I hit the time box-ish. And my grandma used to say, Dave, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion. I was like, Gran. She didn't, by the way, just saying. But hopefully this has been enjoyable. I apologize if I spoke a little quick at times for the translators. I thank you for your support. I really do. They have a really hard job, particularly with people like me who use all sorts of random words because it's my language and I can do that. Have a fantastic day. I'm going to be here all day. I don't fly out till tomorrow. I will be not attending some of the Portuguese sessions because my Portuguese is, So I'll be pottering around. I'll probably be sitting at the Agile School or the concrete, sort of anywhere that has a nice comfy seat because I'm getting quite old. Please come and have a chat. Tell me about your adventures. Tell me about your problems. Tell me about your successes. I like those in particular. Let's talk about Leicester City Football Club. Whatever you want, I'm here to help you today to make you successful. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the day. Change the world. Oh, we have questions.
Pessoal, agora nós vamos abrir para fazer as perguntas. Alguém quer começar?
Apparently she's saying we have 5 minutes for questions. You see, I'm becoming Portuguese. I can speak it now. It's easy. 5 minutes. It's actually, though, just to talk about your Portuguese, it sort of sounds Spanish, sounds Italian, but is neither of those things. I mean, it's the most... I'm like, what? An Agade? I'm like, no, that should be much shorter. Thanks, tar. I'm like, what is this? Anyway, but it's awesome. It's confusing. All right, so have we got any questions? I know it's embarrassing. Gentleman there, good-looking guy there. Tell me.
Primeiramente, queria agradecer a palestra. Queria fazer uma pergunta no sentido de a parte do Scrum, ela serve apenas para software ou ela é adaptável para a área de finanças?
Oh my God, so a really good question for the English speakers in the room. Is Scrum only for software? Thank you, I couldn't have asked for a better question. No! Now, all right, a little bit of history of Scrum. So Scrum started in software. The reason why it started in software was because there was not a clear delineation between creative work and non-creative work. It started in software because it was an incredibly complex problem and change was happening rapidly, right? The reason why Ken and Jeff invented Scrum was out of necessity in Burlington, Massachusetts about 28 years ago. They literally built it out of necessity to solve complex problems. Complex problems now are not just for software. In fact, let me tell you a very, very brief story. This is very brief. I was recently at CRISPR, the gene editing organization. Some of you may have heard this story. I apologize, it's probably boring you. But CRISPR, right? CRISPR, you know what they're doing? They're using viruses to change your genes. Not you, you're pretty good looking and perfect. But your genes. Anyway, so he's very handsome. Anyway, so they're using genetics to change genes. So genetic blindness, hemophilia, any disease, being English, they can all be cured. I think that's a bit beyond them. But they can all be cured. Now, they've got billions of dollars of funding. They're being driven by MIT and Harvard, a collaboration. They're based in Boston. And I met the head of their PMO. The head of their PMO said, we've got amazing scientists, the best in the world. We've got geneticists. We've got computer scientists. We've got big data people. We need Scrum to get these people to work together to solve problems. We need Scrum, or we need something. I told them they needed Scrum, by the way. We need something that helps them collaborate, because guess what? They don't want to collaborate. Scientists want to hoard information, hide it, until they publish it and then become famous. Computer scientists don't talk the same language as anybody else, and they just want to sit in the corner with their headsets on, with their little beards and their tight jeans, going like this. They don't want to work together. Scrum isn't just for software. Scrum is about solving complex problems. It's a very simple set of techniques for getting teams and teams together, teams and teams of people together to solve complex problems. Now, if those problems are financial, that's cool. If they're biological, medical, that's cool. If they're anything that's complex, and we define a complex problem by not knowing how to do it and not really knowing what it is. Obviously, CRISPR is a great example of that, right? They've got amazing techniques. They're using the AIDS virus. They're using the flu virus, the common cold, to change. But they don't know how it's going to work. They're continuously working on these values, and they're trying to get these people to work together. Now, it's very challenging, but Scrum is for everyone. So you're going to say, what about the Scrum Guide? We're working on that. We've got to change it to make it a little bit more accessible. I don't think it's wrong today, but things like potentially releasable increment, the idea of definition of done, the way we describe things can be a little off-putting. But I know if you go to a training class delivered by he will tell you a story that's much broader than software. And now our PST community is doing that now. And we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on the Scrum Guide. So I apologize and we're going to fix it. And that was a much longer answer than you expected or wanted, right? But I just wanted to do it. But a great question. Thank you so much. Is that it? No more questions. Oh, well, just one question. He was lucky. But come and find me outside, okay? And have a great conference.
Beleza. Obrigado, Dave. Thank you, Dave. Eu vi que colocaram... Oh,
Sorry.
thank
Do you
you.
want it? Do you need it? I don't know. Okay.
Eu vi que colocaram perguntas lá no slide. Mesmo que eu tenha falado para não colocarem, colocaram. Tá bom, gente, pode colocar, já que vocês querem. Coloquem lá as perguntas no slide. Porque até que funcionou, viu? Até que funcionou. Chegou a perguntinha rápida aqui. Pena que a gente não teve muito tempo, então acho que o Fernando, que eu vi o nome dele aqui. Fernando, chega lá no Dave, então, e faz a pergunta, que ele vai estar andando aí pela conferência o resto do dia, tá? Então, cara, ele é muito gente boa, podem chegar lá que vocês vão ver que é uma pessoa show de bola. Pessoas, então, slide do Dave aqui, slide.do, entrem por favor, #Dave, façam uma avaliação, super importante para a gente, beleza? E a gente também pede desculpa, mas a gente vai ser super rigoroso com os horários, tá? Porque isso é importante para o sucesso da conferência como um todo. Nesse exato momento, então, a gente vai ter um coffee break lá para aquecer os nossos estômagos e para a gente ficar bem fortinho para a gente continuar esse dia. Bacana? São 30 minutos de coffee e daí a gente volta para o início das palestras. Valeu!